Today I'm going to show you how to do wire wrapping. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the tools that you're going to need, and I'm going to show you how to open and close a jump ring. So let me start with the tools. You'll want to have what's called a chain nose plier, and a chain nose is tapered, so it goes from a thicker area to a fine point, and it has a flat interior. So some people will call it a flat nose, but you want to make sure that you get a chain nose because the flat nose will not have the taper at the end. And then you'll also want to get a round nose. I like to get a pretty fine round nose pliers that gets really small at the tip. And you want to make sure all your pliers are smooth. Sometimes you'll find pliers with teeth in the middle, and you want to avoid those because they will mar the metal. Here's the wire cutter that I like to work with. It's a pretty fine wire cutter, so you can't use this with really thick wires, but this works really well, and it's good to get a really close trim on your wires. So for this project, I'm going to show you how to work with a 26 gauge wire. This is a plated wire. It's a craft wire. It's really good though to start with something like a craft wire when you're beginning, because it's less expensive and more forgiving. This is a 22 gauge wire, which is actually a thicker wire, and I'll also show you how to work with that. Then we do have these little ball pin head pins that you can use when you're doing earring designs or any kind of little dangles. These are actually sterling silver and gold vermeil. Here we have some of the rings that I'll be attaching to. This is just like an antiqued brass, and this one here is actually a jump ring. You can see that little slit in there. It's an open ring. The beads that I'm going to work with, I have some freshwater pearls, which are nice to wire wrap, and you have to use thin wire because the hole is pretty small. I also have some gemstones that have pretty small holes. These are some tourmalated quartz, and we have an iolite. This is what's called a briolette, and for this I'm going to show you a special method of top drilled wire wrapping. And then we have some onyx beads. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to show you how to do the wire wrapping for the top drilled bead, the briolette bead. So you'll want to cut yourself a pretty good piece of wire, somewhere around 5 inches is usually good. And then you'll get the wire and thread it through the hole, which sometimes is really hard to find on these little gemstones. And you'll want to put it about center, maybe not quite center, leave one piece a little bit longer. And with your hands first, gently just bend the wire up toward the middle, toward that point on the top. Make sure that you have a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want your stone to not be able to move when it's hanging. Now once you've crossed both of the wires, you're going to get your flat nose, your chain nose pliers, and you're going to make these straight. So just a slight bend with your pliers to each wire. This is why the chain nose comes in handy, because you can get into those tight little spaces. Now you'll want to wire wrap with the longer of the wires. So take your chain nose and you'll want to make a nice right angle like that. And then you'll want to switch over to your round nose plier, and working somewhere toward the tip so you get a smaller hole, a smaller loop size, you will put your round nose plier right in that right angle. And you're going to work with this long wire and pull it up over, and pull it pretty tight so you get it nice and snug on that round nose. This is how you're going to get a really precise loop. And then you'll have to move your round nose so that one of the pliers is in the loop and the other is on top. This way you can pull this under just slightly so you have a complete loop. When your loop is complete, if at this point you want to put chain or a ring or something in there, you'll want to put it on before you start doing your wrapping, so that everything is a solid connection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this soldered brass loop in there. Now when you're wrapping, you're going to grab a hold of the loop and that other piece of wire that's just going straight up and down, because this piece is going to wrap around both. And so I like to just wrap with my fingers, and you just go around, up and over, and try to keep your, if you need to, you can pull your wire in as you're wrapping so that you're keeping your coils really tight, one right under the other. And once you have about 4 coils, you can trim. And so you're going to trim this piece. Make sure when you trim that your flush side is toward your bead and not your beveled side. So you get a nice flush cut. And then you'll want to trim this piece and get in there about as close as you can without trimming any of the important wires. And then you have your little briolette wrapped. And if something is sticking out and it's catching on your finger, you can always go in and kind of smush it down a little with your chain nose, like that. Okay, now I'm going to do just a normal wire wrap with this onyx bead, which has a nice big hole. So I'm going to up my gauge to a 22 gauge because I like to work with as thick of a wire as possible, just for strength of construction. So for this project, I'm still going to cut myself 5 feet. You may not end up needing 5 inches, not 5 feet. You may not need all of that, but it's nice to have more when you first start out. And I'm going to start by making a right angle with my chain nose, and I'm going to work about 1/3 of the way down on my wire. Just going to bend it like that so I have a nice right angle. And then I'm going to switch over to my round nose plier, and I'm going to put that in there so it's right in that angle. And you'll want to put it wherever you want, however big you want your loop to be, you'll want to put it on that particular section. I usually work right about here. It's a little closer to the tip. And if you would like to, you could even mark your pliers with like a permanent marker in the spot that you like to work in so your loops are consistently the same size. So we're going to bend this short wire up over the round nose like that. Now at this point you need to change positions. You're going to put the loop will be on the bottom mandrel here, and then this will be on top, so that way you can pull your wire underneath and get a nice solid loop that's very circular. So if you want to put this on something, again, you'll want to make sure and put your loop in there, or your piece of chain, or whatever you're connecting to, before you go ahead and wrap. Okay, so there we are. We have our loop with our soldered ring in there. Now I'm going to wire wrap. So I'm going to hold my loop flat, and I'm going to be wrapping this shorter piece around this longer piece. And I'm just going to wrap with my finger. I'm going to go up and over, down and under, and back up and over, keeping my coils as tightly together as I can, working slowly if I need to. And I like to give myself at least 2 coils. Sometimes you may end up wanting more if you like the look of the coils. When you've finished that, you can trim the excess wire. Again, make sure your flush side is toward the piece you're keeping, and the beveled side will be toward the scrap. This will give you a nice flush cut. And if you have a little piece that sticks out and catches your thumb, you may want to smash it down with your chain nose so everything is Nice. Now my loop got a little smaller when I wrapped, and that does happen sometimes. Just by virtue of pulling, your loop will shrink a little bit. So if that happens to you, just work a little higher up on your round nose pliers. So I'm going to go ahead and put my bead on at this point, and I'm going to wrap the other side now. So when you go to wrap the other side, again, you're going to make a right angle, and you want to make sure that you leave enough room between the bead and where the right angle is going to start, so that you have the same length here as you had here for about 3 coils. Now we're going to go ahead and wrap or make a right angle like that, and now we're going to go ahead and make our loop in the same location as we had before, up and over, and then switch positions and pull it under. And now at this point, if I want to put another ring on here, I can. Go ahead and slide that in there. And then I'm going to grip my loop, I'm going to hold it with my flat nose, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap. Now the thicker wire is generally a little bit harder to work with, and so it takes a little getting used to. This is pretty much a soft wire, which I find the softer wires sometimes are harder to wrap with because they just want to go wherever. If you get wire like sterling wire and you get half hard wire, that can help, that little bit of tension in the wire can help you when you're wire wrapping, make it more consistent. So that's a wire wrapped link that you can go ahead and use within a piece of jewelry, or a bracelet or a necklace. So for this, we're going to use one of these sterling silver balled head pins, and this will show you how to work with a head pin. You don't have to use a ball pin. You can sometimes just get a head pin that has just a flat bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and work with the freshwater pearl on this dangle. So I'm going to slide my pearl onto there. And this is very similar to the last sequence. You're basically going to do the same steps, but you only have to do them once because you're only doing this one side. So again, we're going to grip it with our chain nose, and you're going to leave the little bit of space here for your coils, and you're going to make a right angle. And then now we're going to make our loop. So we're going to grab our round nose, put it right in there, right in the right angle, and we're going to go up and over. And then at this point we're going to switch our positioning. We're going to put our loop down here so we can pull this wire all the way underneath. And this gives us a nice round, even loop. And when you're wire wrapping, at this point you could put your chain on the loop, just slide it through. I don't have anything to put on here, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab that loop flat with my chain nose, and I'm going to take this wire and I'm just going to wrap around. This is a thinner wire. And once I've got about 2 or 3 coils, then I can go ahead and trim with my flush cutter. And if I want to squeeze that little bit that's still sticking out, like that, and you can see that I made a pretty small little loop on there. But these would go great in a pair of dangly earrings or a charm bracelet or something. So now I'm going to show you how to open and close a jump ring. You can see that this has a little slit in there. I can tell also because my nail can go into it there, so I know it's an open ring, it's not soldered shut. And I like to do this with 2 chain nose pliers. So I will go ahead and line it up so that I'm gripping it on as much of the ring as I can, and I'm right there where that slit is. And then I'm going to line up my left hand, and it's a little harder because this hand doesn't have as much control. And you can see my pliers are kind of going in like a triangular position. Now when I open and close from the top here, I'm going to be going one direction with one hand and the other direction with the other. And so it's a sort of side-to-side motion. And I can open this pretty big that way. Now, if I want to put something in there at this point, I would go ahead and do that. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to close it again. When I close my jump rings, I tend to squeeze my hands inward as I'm going back side to side in the opposite directions. And that way, I can make sure to line this up really evenly so that I don't have any gaps in between and my sides, my two sides met each other again.